and welcome to Cinematic Trash. I collect movies. What started as a small venture ultimately grew into an enormous beast with no clear end goal other than, you gotta collect them all. I've got to have all of them. Every Criterion release, every limited edition from Arrow Video. There's just so much to get from Scream Factory, even more from Kino Lorber, and don't even get me started on Severin or Vinegar Syndrome. On top of that, it seems that all the other boutique Blu-ray labels such as Indicator, Eureka, or Imprint, or Synapse, or Code Red, or Blue Underground, or 88 Films are all just a distant dream. I'm only 19 years old. I've been collecting movies ever since I was little, but only up until I was 16 years old did I really start collecting boutique Blu-rays on a serious level. Yet I've only really slightly itched the surface. I feel like I haven't really truly cracked it. So I guess I'll provide a little bit of context. I turned 19 a few months ago, so yes, technically I am an adult now, but I still have the same feelings that I felt ever since I started collecting. Most people my age don't really give a shit about cinema the same way that I do. The ones that do are few and far between. Not only are they rare, but they're scattered around the world. So I've never really truly got to meet anyone in person that's my age and shares the same love for cinema that I do. For me, it's become a bit of an educational hobby. It really started by accident in kind of an unlikely way. The chain of events goes something like this. When I was growing up in elementary school, Blockbuster Video was in its last days. The year I was born in, it was early enough for me to be able to experience and remember everything about Blockbuster, but I was born too late to really enjoy and appreciate Blockbuster the way I do now. I am a huge Godzilla fan. Although I've been to G-Fest, I've come to realize that there are other people out there that are way bigger fans than I'll ever be. But considering the town I was from, I was the biggest Godzilla fan within that 30-mile radius. Anyways, at that Blockbuster, I ended up renting some Godzilla movies, and I would rent them over and over and over again. Until one day, the Blockbuster closed. Now I was on the hunt to find Godzilla movies. Back then, between the years 2010 and 2013, finding Godzilla stuff in the wild was nearly impossible. So that's how my movie collection started as a whole. I was trying to hunt down Godzilla movies. Now, of course, I was too young to be watching this, but I watched it anyway. Cinemassacre. This guy, James Rolfe. Despite the recent controversy surrounding his channel and his website, you've gotta admit, this guy is the reason why Godzilla had a huge resurgence in pop culture in the United States. But that's a video for another time. The reason I bring him up is because through his videos, I found out about other movies and franchises like Gamera, Friday the 13th, Halloween, Nightmare on Elm Street, and many others. I learned about all kinds of horror, sci-fi, and Hollywood classics through this guy. I was obsessed. I wouldn't shut up about it. I was that kid in class, always talking about the weird movies. Now, I forget her name, but we had a volunteer chaperone kind of help out with the class. She would read to us and help with the teacher and stuff like that. She listened to me. As I understand it, she had a son who was in college at the time who was pretty much just like me. Now, I was in first grade and her son was in college, but he had sent her this 50 movie sci-fi pack from Mill Creek Entertainment to give to me because this pack has some Gamera films on it. And it was a treasure trove because not only did I finally get my hands on these Gamera movies, I got to take a look at these other films I've never heard of. It's all public domain garbage, but admittedly, there are hidden gems on here. And that's how it all started. I was young, all I had was a DVD player, so for the longest time all I got were DVDs to add to my collection. This 50 movie pack opened the gateway for me. I started collecting from the label and not the actual movie. Anytime I found a Mill Creek set with the number 50 on it, I got it. So for a few years, the rest of elementary school and most of middle school, I had immersed myself in pretty entirely public domain garbage. I did, however, make consistent trips to the flea market with my dad, and I would buy cheap DVDs and VHS tapes of other cult films and franchises. I was becoming quite the aficionado for horror, sci-fi, cult films, and kaiju films, and it was pretty impressive for a 13-year-old. One day I was visiting my grandparents, and at some point I was flipping channels on their television, and I landed on channel 50, which for us was Turner Classic Movies. And what was playing was this pre-code crime film with James Cagney called Picture Snatcher. And I was hooked. 13-year-old Pierce liked it so much, I wanted to see more of what this channel had to offer. So I constantly had TCM on the TV, and I would watch classic movies. And that's where I made the jump from cult horror and sleazy films to actual cinema and Hollywood classics. Of course, TCM for a little while had their own line of specially made DVD 4-packs with MGM and Warner Brothers. They had 4 movies, usually on 4 discs. Each movie usually had a boatload of special features, which was crazy how they fit it all on one DVD. And of course, the packaging was shiny and they all looked great, especially side by side with one another. So once again, I was crazed, and I tried hunting down all these TCM sets. It was my way of introducing myself to even more actors and directors, and even more films. I collected them for a couple years. Ironically, the minute I started collecting them, they all instantly went out of print, and the prices for them kept climbing higher and higher. And they got even harder to find. You used to be able to get all of them at Big Lots for $8. Now, in order to get a rare one in good condition, you have to drop nearly $30 or more online. eBay preferably if you want the slipcovers. Now, at this point, I was a sophomore in high school, and I was pretty behind on the physical media realm. I was still buying DVDs and VHS tapes. They were cheap, easy to get in bulk, and that was the only means I had of watching these movies. One day, a family friend donated a big box of their movies, in which the box had some Blu-rays in it. It was time. I needed to upgrade my system. In junior year of high school, I got a brand new 4K smart TV. I got a Blu-ray player. I now have a 4K player that's region free, but at the time all I could get was the Blu-ray player. I had gotten my first job. When the Criterion half-off sale came around, I bought my first round of Criterions. Now, this is why I even brought up the Godzilla stuff earlier in this video. Not only did it fuel the collection hobby as a whole, the original Gojira is in the Criterion collection, and every year I went to G-Fest, the big commotion all the time was how Janus Films bought the license to the Showa Godzilla films. And for years, all I was hearing about was Criterion this and Criterion that. I jumped on the bandwagon. Every time Criterion held a sale, I took advantage of the opportunity, and that's what I collected for the year. And then, of course, Criterion Collection finally put out the infamous Godzilla collection for spine number 1000. By senior year, my movie collection had kicked into high gear. I knew what to look for, I knew what to collect, I enjoyed what I was watching. During a trip to South Carolina, I ended up getting my first Arrow video set that I stumbled upon in a music and movie store. On top of that, my local FYE started carrying titles from Scream Factory. I ended up getting another higher paying job. I turned 18, I learned how to use credit cards, and I got my own credit card. So now I could order boutique Blu-rays pretty much whenever I please. Within my budget, of course, instead of hoping to find them in the wild. Fast forward to now, my collection has exploded in size and variety. So now, I'm sure everyone is wondering, how big of a collection can a 19-year-old muster? It's pretty big, yet it is still only a fraction of what's out there. And I actually have 2 collections. The main collection is still at my parents' house. I took a portion of my collection with me to my apartment, and while I was here, I started building on what I have, so I now have 2 collections. The one at my parents' house is way bigger than what I got here, but in all fairness, this is enough to keep me occupied for a while. So my main focus is Arrow Video. They do excellent work and they put out a lot of limited edition stuff. It's hard to keep up, and I've definitely missed out on a lot of stuff. Criterion Collection is my second biggest focus. Criterions go out of print on a way slower rate than Arrow. Criterion is like the comfort food of boutique Blu-ray collecting. It's almost guaranteed to always be at Barnes & Noble, and most of the Criterions that do go out of print end up with a better release from whoever gets the license afterward. The rest is really tricky because they're all so expensive. I pretty much get Scream Factory and Kino Lorber stuff as I find them. As much as I want to go on a huge spending spree to get caught up with those labels, among others like Severin or Vinegar Syndrome or Indicator and the tens of others, it's not realistic. Like I said, I work a minimum wage job. You don't see people my age pulling six figures, you know? That's why Arrow and Criterion take center stage. They are easier to access than others. Anything, really. It's not that I have to have everything in every collection. It's just the fact of life that I'm 19 years old. Collecting boutique Blu-rays is generally a hobby for people much older than I am. These are people who've been around the block. They've been alive for years, they've seen the film industry change, they saw films in the theater in their original run, been with mom and pop video stores and Blockbuster most of their lives, and they start collecting boutique Blu-rays when they first started coming out. A collector requires years of experience, refining their taste and figuring out what they like. As a 19-year-old, I haven't been around long enough to see the amount of movies that someone who is middle-aged or older. That means everything I buy in my collection is pretty much a blind buy. Everything I buy, it will be the first time seeing it if it isn't an upgrade of something I already owned. Like I said, I live on a budget, so I am always having to choose wisely, so to speak. Because of the fact I am so young, a lot of huge releases came and went before I was even thinking about it, which to this day I wish I had. Primarily the Halloween set from Shout Factory and the Al Adamson set from Severin, on top of the many sets from Indicator and Arrow that came and went as well. So I'm sure now that a lot of you are curious to know what I have in my collection, and I know a lot of you are curious of what my taste is as someone who's part of Gen Z, and how it translates to the boutique Blu-ray community. This video is getting pretty long now, so maybe a collection tour will have to come in the form of another video, perhaps better suited for when I have both collections together at the same time. So this is my story. This is how a teenager ended up getting caught up in the world of collecting boutique Blu-rays. The world of physical media is a tough maze to navigate, especially when you're learning and forming your taste as you go along. This video, I think, pretty much answers all the questions most people have asked me when it comes to this topic. But if there are any of you out there that have any more questions or more specific questions, please feel free to comment them down below and I'll try to answer them. I'll either reply to your comment or I'll answer them in its own video. Anyways, as always, thank you all for sticking around. Thanks for watching. Until next time, take care now.